Well, folks, it's the Two Ordinary Cops October edition, and I'm with my good friend and colleague Ben Schultz. What's going on, my friend?
Well, mate, we're living the dream, I'd like to say, but mate, I am actually very, very happy today. We have, well, I imagine this is our first contact from a cop across the ditch.
The, what?
So,
Great Britain, New Zealand.
yeah, from New
Mate.
Zealand, mate. So, a big shout out to Mark. He got in contact with us, and he's been catching up with our show over the last couple of weeks, just binging on it. So, mate, we're glad you like it. He thinks it's really good the way we talk about some of the subjects and tell it how it is. So, yeah, so he's very happy. But he wanted us to talk about some of the ARPs that have come across from New Zealand into Australia, or especially Northern Territory.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can definitely touch on that because, well, as we've mentioned before, mate, I think Alice Springs was almost Kiwi radio, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yes, it was hard to know which country you were in driving around in New Zealand, but yeah. So ARP, for those who don't know what it is, an accelerated recruitment program, which was a thing set up in NT, and I think most jurisdictions have got it. I know New South Wales have just started. They never had anything like that. I think Queensland had a bridging program, and a few other places have got it as well. But basically, what that allows you to do is go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction and come across at a level of seniority. So you don't lose rank, you don't sort of lose your time in the job. Like there'd be nothing worse. Imagine if you're an engineer and you're pretty good at what you do, and you start off in a new area, and all of a sudden you're in a cadetship again. So
Yeah,
basically, it removes the fact that people understand that policing is policing, and they'll just have to learn some different skills to come across and learn a bit of legislation, how computer systems work, and court processes and things like that. But basically, dealing with people and that experience in actual law enforcement is pretty universal. So I think it's an excellent thing. I mean, if you're a nurse or a teacher or anything like that, you can just get registered in a different area and away you go. So it makes sense that you can do that within policing as well. So what happened? Obviously, it was open to interstate, but I believe I can't remember the year. Whatever year it was early 2000, early 2010s. They opened the international recruitment as well, especially with New Zealand. And as a result, we had a heap of Kiwis come across and join the NT Police. But like I've said before, we've got a friendly rivalry with the Kiwis. Can't say too much. Your partner Miriam, very much a New Zealander, straight out of Christchurch. But
yep,
yeah, no, they're excellent, mate. They're really good at what they do. They fit in beautifully. The culture's very similar, and yeah, they're excellent police. They've got a really good nature about them. I think they're trained well and they're well experienced. So
yeah,
yeah, I had nothing but positive experience with Kiwis, even if
yeah.
you can't
Well,
understand what they're saying.
yeah, yeah. You've got to get them to buy some vowels every now and again,
Yeah,
but
that's right. Yeah,
um, yeah, like I found them very good at talking and explaining and actually, de-escalating situations. I found
mate,
them to
they're
be very,
very
very
patient. They're very
yeah,
patient people, and don't get me wrong. All good police are patient, but I don't remember any Kiwis. And look, of course, there could be exceptions, but I don't remember any certainly none that I came in contact with. They were all calming. They had a calming effect. The guys in Alice that I worked with in 2015, 16, 17, they had a great sense of humour. They just fit in. They were just part of the team. There was no difference. We didn't know where they were from. They just spoke funny. That was it.
yeah,
They were NT coppers, mate. We didn't care. They were all good. So yeah.
yeah.
But no, shout out Mark. And it wasn't he's talking about doing the art program across to NT.
Mate, yeah, exactly. So he was just asking for a bit of, especially a bit of insight. And the only thing I can probably mention, like you said, it's very similar. I mean, as in the police officers themselves are very similar. The Northern Territory is just a whole new world. So there's a lot of stuff to learn about the culture, especially in the Northern Territory, because you're dealing with, a lot of Aboriginal people.
Mm.
So that might be a bit of a shock. They're slightly different from the Maoris and what you've got over there in New Zealand, and of course we've got a lot of venomous snakes over here as well. So
Yeah.
you got to watch out for that. But I think the thing that that stunned a lot of Kiwis. I had two when I was out at Ramangini. I had two Kiwis working under me, and the thing they found was our system was so convoluted. Well, it just wasn't efficient. I think they had this thing called Windscribe over there,
Yeah.
which because they couldn't really pay much overtime and all that sort of thing, so they had to make their computer systems a lot more efficient. And I thought I thought they could have actually brought like the NT police could have looked at how the New Zealand police run to make it a bit more efficient. So what do you reckon there, mate?
Oh, mate, yeah, look, computer systems, I've spoken about these before. My God, there were some wild systems. And what used to frustrate me was um, you'd go into Macca's, and Macca's had an excellent computer system. And Macca's are just selling hamburgers. But admittedly, they're making a lot of money, so they've got the money to do it. But the police system, you just get so frustrated with the convolution of it and the triplicity, I used to say. So the data entry of one system into another was just, oh my God, just kill you. So
Yeah,
I know the Kiwis came across, and a few of them were pulling their hair out. Look, admittedly, um, and I think talking about ARPs in general, when you go from one jurisdiction to the next, I think it's almost universal. When you go into your training groups and into your squads, I'm pretty sure they put a carton of fence on saying back in New Zealand or back in Queensland or back in New South Wales. If you say that when you're trying to describe something, I'm pretty sure they clock you up to owning a carton that Friday afternoon, because we all know all different places do it differently. But you've got to understand you've moved to a new jurisdiction. And that would be for NT coppers moving into any other way. Or back in the NT, there's a carton, shut up. So it's, you kind of, and not ridiculously. Obviously, there's learning opportunities, hence the reason you're bringing in experienced police from other areas. But I know the Kiwis they were really good at that. They wouldn't say back in New Zealand, but occasionally they went, I've used this system called Windscribe before, and it's just incredible. It removes all this bullshit that you guys have to do. And that was now us. So, oh, yeah, the old computer systems, that used to be the biggest burden. It was just a pain in the butt. So,
yeah,
anyway, yeah, I think the frustration was, you can understand if there's a lot of things to do and you've got a lot of information to input. The frustration came from the fact that you knew it could be done so much more efficiently. So I think
yeah.
that's where the frustration came from. But anyway, yeah, the old Windscribe. So Mark's looking at doing the ARP. Is that he's looking at coming across? Yeah,
Yeah, mate. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, you just want a bit of insight into ARPs that have come across and how they found it. I suppose coming across, and like I joked about the venomous snakes, but the poor boys out with us, particularly one, the midgies, he didn't react too well to them. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I reckon they're worse. Yeah, that's shocking.
that's just an environmental factor.
Oh, terrible. Yeah, but hey, listen, mate, I want to do another shout out before we move on. Sorry, what we're going to talk about today is wild stuff. Like, we want to
Yep.
talk about wild stuff because, I mean, we've done a few funny things. The trouble is, I can't remember all the funny stuff, and I've said it 1,000 times. I just can't remember it. Funny stuff was every day, but we've sort of racked our brains a bit with sort of about some real wild stuff. Like, you just look around and go, "Holy bloody hell! Are we in a civilized community, or are we in a bloody war zone?" And I think that's what we can go on about. But I do have to do a quick shout out. At the moment, I'm in Coffs Harbour and doing some training. We've done remote area first aid. We carry out some chainsaw training. Look, I'm not the most experienced chainsaw operator, but the fellow I'm working with, he's all over it. Ex-forestry worker, incredibly good with chainsaws. And we're also doing four-wheel driving, which I've sort of done heaps of through the years. So that's what we're training. But we're training in an organisation called Fire Sticks, and they're an Indigenous land management group, basically based in Queensland, New South Wales, and a few other places. And anyway, I was sort of talking about the podcast in one of the breaks today, and a few of them were interested. And during the four-wheel drive component, we were talking about Cahill's Crossing, which, for those who don't know,
Oh,
is the picture of the front of our podcast. So, a shout out to, I think Leighton is the boss. Leighton and Amber are sort of running the crew. So, a shout out to Leighton, Amber, and the crew at Fire Sticks. I told them I'd give them a shout out if they if they sign up to the podcast. So I'll have to push the issue. Yeah, so that's where we're at. But yeah, but moving on to today's topic, mate. Wild stuff. Do you want to kick it off with some wild stuff in K Town, Catherine?
well, Mate, I will. And it was funny we first kind of thought, let's just spark it up a little bit. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm going, oh, because you do forget, you're just trying to rack your brain, and then suddenly this story popped into my head, and I've thought about this one months ago, and I thought I really need to get this one out. So, but first of all, I'm going to start off, and I'm going to ask you a question, Damo. This is an
Mm.
idea I got off another podcast. If you could relate your policing career to any movie actor as a police officer, would which actor would you be?
Oh, Jesus. Oh, mate, you put me on notice. Look, there would have to be somebody who has a good sense of humour. I would love
Yeah,
to think. I would love to think
Axel Foley, mate.
Paul Hogan. I don't think I'm not necessarily a funny fella all the time. I just love funny stuff. I really do. So I'm probably not the comedian, but yeah, no, it'd be Paul Hogan. I reckon he's just an Aussie legend. So to me, it was just, yeah, it would be Paul Hogan because you know how in Crocodile Dundee in New York, when he's over in New York, he knocks old mate out who gives him grief at the prostitutes outside the pub. So
Oh
he's a
yeah.
tough sort of larrikin. So yeah, I reckon sticking up for the underling, being out in the scrub, a bit wild. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a crocodile wrestler. I'm shit scared of crocodiles. You won't get me within 20 metres of a bloody crocodile. Not a snowflake's chance in hell. I don't even like being on boats where I know there's crocodiles. So, no, but yeah, I think Paul Hogan. Not so much Croc Dundee, but Paul Hogan.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go, mate. When I was growing up, I kind of had this idea, and I like Mel Gibson or in Lethal Weapon.
Oh,
So
yep, yep, yep.
yeah, so and
Yeah,
Riggs, Martin Riggs,
yeah. Just a few less gunfights, mate.
yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. There was, yeah. I mean, geez, I never actually even got my gun out of the holster, which is a good thing.
And he did well there.
Yeah, exactly. But I kind of like the action. You know what I mean? So, and the reason I'm going to tell this story because there was something that happens in this story that I did that Mel Gibson did in a movie. So, and anyway, so I was actually working in crime at the time, and as you know, they get a lot of short, especially if people are sick and all that sort of thing. And it was a Saturday night, and I think the senior sergeant asked me on Friday if I could actually do the Saturday night shift because they were short a few staff. So I came across from crime back into general duties just for one night. To do a 12-hour shift. And a big shout out to Shorty. I was working with Shorty that night. Great copper.
Yeah, man's a legend,
Um,
Shorty. Yeah,
he is, yeah. So I was yeah. So anyway, we're it's a pretty average night. You know, you're just cruising around doing your normal stuff, just attending a few low end jobs and all that sort of stuff. And so we thought, oh well, just do a bit of traffic, on the road out to Binjari and Victoria Highway there. So we've just pulled this guy over, and anyway, we're just going through the process and. We've sat there and just checking his license and anyway, this car outbound, so it's screaming past us. We're still in the 60s, so it's about to go 80. This car went screaming past us, and I mean they would have been doing 150 plus. It was a Toyota Camry, the station wagon style,
yeah, yeah,
and screaming past. Anyway, sure, because we've just done the breath test. We're still waiting on the information for the license, so we couldn't actually go and chase it because if he's a drink driver and we let him drive, he can end up having a crash and killing himself or somebody else. So anyway, we're sitting there just waiting for these results to come back, and I've turned to Shorty and I said, there is going to be a serious car accident tonight. Just watching that. Anyway, so and then we heard the other unit call off into Walbury Camp, which is just up the road from where we were. But anyway, so we're sitting there and we just had the information come back in, and this car has gone screaming back past us again. And we're just going, holy shit. And then it's turned up and turned up. What was that drive that went between Stewart
yeah.
Highway and Victoria Highway?
Bicentennial Drive.
Yeah, Bicentennial. So it's shot up there. And Walbury Camp's about halfway along that.
Yep.
And anyway, so we've just gone, nah, mate, you're right. You go. We basically threw the license back at him and jumped in the car and off we went. Anyway, this guy was screaming it, and then we could hear the other unit just sitting there going, "Oh, I think he's coming back." And then we've called in going, "We're in a pursuit." I mean, we're a fair way behind because he was hooking this guy, and it was D'Souza was in the other car. I can't remember who was his offside. So big shout
Oh,
out
yeah,
to
doesn't
Roger,
matter. Yeah.
wasn't it? So big shout out to him. And anyway,
Yeah.
they're in a
Absolutely
two-wheel
old
drive.
chap. Absolutely old
Yeah,
chap. What a legend he
yeah.
was. Yeah.
And he's in a two-wheel drive Hilux. Anyway, as he's off, so the road that goes straight into Walbury Camp, there's a bit of a speed bump, and then he's past that, but he's probably about 5 meters off the side of the sealed road that goes around there. And anyway, this guy's like basically drove in and just planted the car and rammed straight into the front corner of the police car,
Yeah.
like head on, just smash straight into it. We've then, by the time we've kind of come out, we're kind of getting up to the intersection by this stage. And anyway, old mate's reversed off, so this Camry's still going. Anyway, and he's kind of taken off. So as we've turned in, Roger's tried to turn his car, and he's just given up the ghost. It's stuffed. It's just completely conked out. The whole front end axle is stuffed. So this Toyota Camry has totaled a Toyota Hilux like two-wheel drive. So
Yeah.
anyway, he, and then he's actually pulled up outside this house. So Shorty and I have come in behind, and we're going right. He's gone to face there, and we've both got out of the car, and we've started walking towards it. We're probably about halfway towards it, and then he just plants a foot again. Now me, I've got this idea. I'm going to be Mel Gibson, so I
Oh, dear.
start chasing the fucking car on foot. Now that and Shorty's gone back to his back to the police car and driven. Anyway, I am here thinking I'm Mel Gibson chasing this guy on foot, right? And he's like plowed off then into the forest, the in between Walbury Camp and BP. There's
Yeah.
quite
There's
a bit
just
of
bushland. Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
bushland, so he's taken off into there, and I thought that so I'm sprinting off after him. Shorty's gone past me. Now my plan was it was pretty average really, but the problem was the guy decided to turn around and come back towards me. So I'm going, well, this is really a big problem now. So then I've found the biggest tree I possibly could, and lucky there were some big gum trees around there. So I've just planted myself behind that, and he hasn't bothered with me, luckily. But at that time, Rorky was the shift sergeant. Big shout out
Yeah.
to her.
Yeah.
She's an absolute champion, and she's come down in the four wheel drive Hilux because she heard what was going on. Now the same thing happened. She was actually parked off the side of the road, so she's nowhere near even close to the bitumen. And he's just seen her car and basically gone off the road and ploughed into the front of the four wheel drive Hilux. Spun it. It actually the Hilux spun 180 degrees.
Yeah.
He just plowed into it. Anyway, she got whiplash because it just spun her like so quickly around to the point that even the review mirror in the middle of the Hilux snapped off,
Yeah.
and so she was dazed. Old mate, of course, he might have been wearing a head seatbelt. I'm not really sure, but his head hit the windscreen, and it sent the windscreen about 10 meters in front of the car. But by then, the Camry had decided that that was enough. It had done its day. So
Testament to the Toyota designers.
that's right. And anyway, but the guy actually gets out. Like an Aboriginal guy, he's a Warlpiri, so he's a pretty big lad. Anyway, Rorky, mate, you can't fault her. She's straight out, and she's just hit him with pepper spray. By this stage, Shorty's got there, and I've actually come because it was only a short run away. So then we've gone and actually taken him down and arrested him, and all that sort of stuff. Put him in
Mm.
the cage, and I remember a whole lot of the Warlpiris because he was trying to entice the Warlpiris to come out and fight us all. So we're starting to get surrounded by a whole lot of people, and I remember D'Souza and all them. They're just calming them down. So you've got to show quite a bit of force to try and get them to back down, and
Mm.
and then we got another unit down there to help out. But it was, and then we took him back. But I think the whole story about this was I saw. I think the next morning, the OIC actually came into the station. He's the one that asked me to do that night shift, and he looks at me and he goes, "Schultzy, you're going straight back into crime. He said, we can't afford to have you in GDs. He said, you've
So,
totaled two police cars.
so it's cost us two police cars and an absolute headline.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate, you can just go back in your office and never come out again.
You go back to the family and domestic violence unit, mate. You just sit there and think about what you've done.
Oh, yeah. And look, it's just, isn't it amazing how all this can be taking place? Like, we're talking about a mad bugger in a car ramming into police vehicles. It's all happening. The town's only got 10,000 people. It's not like it's a major centre.
No.
This stuff goes on. You've destroyed two police cars. You're in another car yourself that's now destroyed, driving like a nutcase. And the thing is, it happens all the time. This stuff is
Yeah.
pretty common. Not all the time. Like, it's not a constant event. We'd be the best purchasers of bloody Hiluxes in the world if we were running through them like that. But um, we seriously, those kind of things happen a lot, and quite often they can come from nothing.
Yeah.
And I'll just give it, while you've been talking, because I couldn't think, like, I know lots of wild things, but I can think of something that shocked me a bit. In 2017, I got promoted to sergeant. So I went to sergeant substantive from Alice Springs. I'd been the coroner's constable. I'd gotten the promotional position as a shift supervisor at Darwin City. And anyway, I started up there in September 2017. And within a few weeks, like, I got to know the guys, and I knew a few people already up there. So and I was loving it. I love the culture of the station. It was everyone had a laugh. Like, it was a good station. You were pretty lucky. I've mentioned this before. Darwin City was pretty good because you got a pretty good variation of jobs. You got to do, oh, excuse me, got a bit of a sneeze happening. You got to deal with jobs. You got to deal with jobs that a lot of major cities do get, like Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane do get really big jobs, but you got to be lucky to get them because there's so many police there. In Darwin, those sort of things happen because you're still a major centre. You're still a bit of a frontier up there. So as a result, you get exposed to a lot of those bigger jobs. And I remember it was only a few weeks in, and I've mentioned Todd before, me mate. We're going to have a chat to him at some point. Maybe we'll see what he comes up with. But he was really good because he'd done a bit of time in Darwin and he spent a lot of time in the desert. And he said, "Look, Darwin's just a bit different. Funny things do happen up here. A lot of people think it's soft, but Darwin City's got its moments. I mean, soft compared to the Southern Desert because Alice
Yeah.
Springs, as we spoke about, is just full on. Yeah. So anyway, we yeah we got this job one day where what was happening was there'd been a report of a knife fight basically within Alice. Sorry, at Raintree Park. So
Oh,
so Raintree Park is diagonally opposite from the Darwin police station, literally in the middle of town. So I remember just going down and going, bloody hell, that's a bit weird. So I sent a crew there, and I went down myself. So I jumped in my car and down I go. Anyway, we pull up and yeah, there'd been a fight and there was a fella stabbed. Anyway, so he's sitting down and the fella with the knife was nearby. So we'd grabbed him and he'd been disarmed, but he'd also been injured. And at this point, it's not a major incident. Like, it's okay, yeah, it's been a knife fight. The guy was stabbed, but it wasn't critical. It was a muscle wound and ambulances coming. We're just securing the scene. But what happened was it just kept escalating. So what happened then was another fella turns up with a knife and wants to stab the fella who's stabbed his brother or whatever, his relation, his family in some way. But he didn't seem to care that it happened to be four policemen standing there. So we're yelling at him. And I mean, we didn't get to the point where firearms were drawn because he sort of stood back and then he put the knife down and then he got arrested as well. And I just remember going, the other fella was bleeding and he was obviously in pain, this other guy who had been stabbed. While we're doing that, there's been a couple of drunks sleeping and they've woken up and we've realised that they're quite unwell and one of them's been assaulted. So there's like, it's just building and building. Anyway, I'm sort of just maintaining it, and I stepped out and I'm just on the Mitchell Street side of Raintree Park for those in Darwin. It's just the edge of the park, so I'm on the street pretty well. Nothing heightened. We're waiting on an ambulance, and I've got a crew there. And next minute, a wine bottle exploded at my feet, like a bottle of wine. So we all know what a bottle, like a 700 milliliter glass bottle of wine, explodes at my feet. And I look at the way that the liquid had splashed, and I looked the opposite way to see where it had come from. And in the middle of the street is this man holding a full can of beer with a very intent look at me, like he's going to hoik this thing at me from about 5 meters away as hard as he possibly can. So what's happened
Yep.
is, out of pure luck, he's thrown a 700 milliliter full bottle of wine at me as hard as he can. It just so happened to miss me and land sort of at my feet a bit, but past me. So it would have hit me in probably the abdomen, you know.
Yep.
Anyway, I turn and look at him, and he throws this full can of, I think it was beer or something. He throws it as fast as he possibly can. And I move my head to the left, and the can just flew straight past my head at full speed. He threw it as fast as he could. And he's coming towards me, and he's got a bag, and he pulls another can out and lines it up and throws another one straight at me. And I'm like, these are full cans of beer coming at full speed. Like, they're not going to kill me, but they're going to hurt. Anyway, so I'm like, what the hell? So I ducked that one. And in between that, I can't remember their classification, but we went from those little tiny, almost useless Mark IV pepper sprays. We had the party packs that we've spoken about before, being the little fire extinguisher Mark 9 party packs, pepper sprays that are just brilliant. Well, in
Yep.
between, we got these, I think they were Mark 6. They're like, I used to call them a gathering pack. They were a personal issue little thing, but they were good because they had good range and they put out a fair bit of material, and they were
Yep.
pretty effective. They'd drop you because they'd hit you with a decent amount straight away, and you'd sort of drop pretty quick because it was a bit more concentrated too, I think. Anyway, so I pull that out as he's reloading can number 3. I hit him with as much of this bloody pepper spray as I can. I'm sort of just, he's in the middle of the street and there's traffic coming around him. And I just run out in the middle of the street, and so I've got him in the eye, so he's dropped his glance and sort of put the can down to the, he's still holding it, but he's put it to his side. And I ran out and I shoved him as hard as I could and threw him onto the ground, and I flipped him over and handcuffed him. And it's just, I couldn't believe, like, it was just a response. It was just a reaction. Anyway, oh, no, it gets better. So I pick him up and I'm just wheel him up, and he's obviously, this pepper spray has taken effect, and he's in a lot of pain and he can't really see. And I put him in, when you handcuff someone to the rear, well, you can do a wrist lock through the handcuff and grab their
Yep.
shoulder. It's a bit of like an escort hold. That's really effective because it puts a lot of pain compliance on their wrist. So I've done that and pulled his shoulder back, and I'm just wheeling him into the park to put him in one of the cages. And by this stage, the other guys have realised what I'm doing. So they've come over to help. And we put this guy over there, we put him up against. I've just gone, who the bloody hell are you? Like, we're dealing with another job and you just attacked me for no reason. Well, he had nothing to
Yep.
do with it. Anyway, so we arrest him. Meanwhile, the crowd's building and they're starting to get wild. We're in the middle of Darwin. Literally, the corner of Nucky Street and Mitchell Street is the dead centre. So picture bloody Martin Place in Sydney. Like, that's where we are. We're
Yep.
in the middle of Darwin. Anyway, so we get this fella arrested, but we're still dealing with everything else that's happening, like this stabbing and all the rest of it. The families have built, and next minute fistfights break out all around us between these different family clans. And I remember going, "That's it, we're taking control of this." And I got on the radio and I said, "I require all available units to Raintree Park, Darwin." And they're like, "What are you on about?" It's like, this matter is escalating. And then there's weapons being produced and all sorts of stuff. By
Jeez.
this stage as well, a good mate of ours, and you know him as well, Timmy Hatton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
Timmy's turned up. He's got a at that point
Did
he
he
had
have
this,
Viper then?
hey.
Did he have Viper then?
Yeah, it was that stupid bloody
Oh,
what was
oh
it?
yeah, that
That
bloody mean dog.
Rottweiler. This insane
Yeah.
thing, this uncontrollable, horrible bloody Rottweiler. Anyway, it didn't last very long because it kept biting people. Like, it was just a bad dog. Anyway, he had this dog and he's there next to me and he's got it under control. And I've said, "Mate, the next person who comes anywhere near us, you bite the bastards." And he's gone, "I'm all ahead of it." He's already onto it. He was already going to launch his bloody dog. And it just kept building. Like, these people just, so the job went from, okay, we've had a knife, like there's been a knifing incident, but it escalated to another knife fight, which escalated to a police officer being attacked with loaded bloody alcohol cans and bottles and whatever else you can imagine. And then it escalates to like all out fist fights and weapon fighting with complete disregard for the fact that we now had probably 6 police there or more. Like, there was, obviously Tim had turned up with his dog.
Yep.
And the dog, from memory, didn't bite anyone, but it certainly barked and carried. Like, he got it to rouse, which is stand up and bark and carry on. Anyway, it just kept building, and then a couple of other any unit call and say, "Oh yeah, we can peel away." It's like, no, you bloody can't. I need you in Raintree. Like, we're dealing with this shit. It's getting worse.
Yep.
And I think the reason it was so wild, and I don't know if my words are doing it justice. Like, I had a head on a swivel. There was just issues all around me. and they were completely unrelated. There were just other things happening that all happened to be occurring right then and there in Raintree Park. And I just remember thinking, shit, old Darwin goes all right. Like here I was
Yeah,
thinking that, everyone sort of talks it up. Oh, Darwin's got heaps of units and heaps of people, which is not correct. I mean, you've got a hell of a lot of population there with just as many problems and plenty of alcohol and yeah, sure, you've got different units and you've got night assessment teams from TRG and you've got dogs and all the rest of it, but you've got a lot of population too.
yeah,
So yeah, anyway, I just couldn't believe it. In the end, I think we arrested God knows how many. We locked up a lot of people. We also had intensive care paramedics turning up because some of these fights had got pretty brutal and there were people quite badly hurt. But I think there was also a lot of patients. So we had the problem where we were tying up all these people. And we probably dealt with that for an hour or so. And I remember we were on an evening shift. So all this we started work at about 11 o'clock at night. So this is all happening at about midnight. And normally into those early hours in your littler centres, so like in your Tennant Creek and Catherine, you'll start to get your domestics and stuff, and little jobs will come in through the night. But your evening shift is normally where it kicks on. That sort of sundown till midnight, till 1, 2 in the morning. That's where you really kick on. Come
yeah,
3, 4, 5 in the morning, everything quietens off a bit, and you can sort of get a bit of work done and deal with those you've dealt with through the night. But this particular night, it just kept going. There was just jobs. There was something wrong in town. We just went from job to job to job to job all night, and they were all pretty bad. Like I remember, it was just pretty crazy. Then we get
yeah,
to morning. I think we knocked off at about 8 in the morning. Like by the time you update everything, and I've mentioned it before, but anytime you deploy pepper spray, you wear it just as much as anyone else. So I think we'd sprayed people a few times that night, and anyway, we got to the end of the day, and it's like, holy shit, man, Darwin goes pretty hard. So
yeah,
yeah, so talk about like going to one job and then having jobs just escalate around you, and I was just like, and I think it all becomes weird because you're in the middle of a so-called first world major capital city in Australia, like it's
yeah,
just wild. It's just wild, and we don't have a bloody a 30-man riot team or 100 cops that we can put there. They're simply not there. So you've sort of just got to keep your wits about you and deal with it with the small numbers you have. But yeah, that's one example. I mean, we could probably have more. There's more examples of wild shit, like just especially in remote communities.
yeah. Oh, yeah,
What are your
exactly.
thoughts, mate?
Yeah, well, mate, I was just sitting there thinking, mate, it wasn't a full moon or anything, was it? Or the build up? Because people that aren't
It
police,
was the build-up. It was definitely the
was it?
build-up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's you can almost roster around a full moon for those people that aren't police, and any police officer going, yeah, yeah, you're dead right. And all the build up. The build up is especially in Darwin, at Catherine. It can it'll just turn to shit
yeah.
very very quickly.
So I'll just explain the build up to those who don't know. So in the Northern Territory, obviously, you don't really have seasons. You've sort of got the wet season and the dry season, and it just sits at about 33 degrees all the time. This is the top end anyway. So
Yep.
the build up is that time after the dry season, sort of between September, not so much, but certainly October, November, and leading into December before the monsoon hits and you get that relieving rain that cools you off every afternoon. So we call it the build up because it's just ridiculously humid, quite still, just very, very uncomfortable. Like you'd be 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember a good mate of mine posted something on Facebook. He was on night shift. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he took a photo of himself and a photo of the dashboard on the police car, and it was showing 33 degrees Celsius, and it was 2 a.m. So it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
33 degrees at 2 a.m., and he was just covered in sweat. So
Yeah.
it's just hot and humid all the time. There's no relief. You've got a lot of people who are living rough. They're not in air conditioning, and there's just no relief from the heat, and it sends them mad. And you just end
It,
up with this madness. And you
it's
throw into that a metric
it,
ton of alcohol.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think the thing is, like, and that lasts a bit. It's just incredible how that it just sends them absolutely crazy. The other
Yeah,
thing, mate, I'm going to touch on is the fact is this is probably anybody that's a police officer knows this probably well and truly by now. Or you learn it very, very quickly. But you're talking about overspray when you get it from pepper spray. And now this happens quite a bit. And I still remember I was in college because in college they get you to cop the pepper spray in your training. And anyway, it burns and it burns for what, probably about an hour or something like that. And then,
yeah,
you kind of wash it off and you kind of forget about it and all that sort of thing. But for anybody going in or anybody that hasn't been pepper sprayed before, and if you do get hit, and these are for new recruits as well, just be very, very careful when you go and have a shower.
Oh,
Um,
yes. I knew where
the,
you were going with that. Oh, yeah.
the
Yeah, there's
reason I'm saying this,
oh, yeah. No, continue, Schultzy. I love it.
the reason I'm saying this is because, of course, I was unaware of this, and in the college, I thought it'd be really tough and take the party pack of pepper spray, and I was shouting out, "Bring it on!" at the time, and of course, I copped it right down the throat and everywhere. I was pretty bit worse for wear, so I was definitely covered well. However, what I didn't realise is when you had a shower afterwards, that pepper spray tends to actually, as it runs down your body, it goes to your nether regions, and suddenly my balls got very, very hot.
Gravity is not your
Um,
friend.
no.
No. Oh, goodness me. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. So it stings
So,
your eyeballs and it stings your other balls, doesn't it, mate?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Actually, I haven't heard any women talk about what's
Oh,
happened to
yeah. I
them.
think that they just keep their cars a little closer, but I'm sure it has the same effect.
The only other thing, mate, I'm going to mention, you've upset Lizzie, my mum,
Oh, yeah.
because you were you were telling a story in the last podcast, but you didn't finish it off.
No,
So
you're right. You're right. I'll
yeah,
finish it.
so I'll let
The,
you finish it off now.
the
So
trouble
she
is,
can
mate, the trouble is, I am a shit magnet. So as a result, so what Liz is referring to was I was talking about teamwork and all that sort of thing, and talking about when we were doing a search and rescue on the Barclay Highway and how TRG turned up, and I think the reason I didn't finish the story was because I was talking about teamwork. I wasn't really talking about the search and rescue. But Liz wanted to know how the search and rescue finished. Well, I'm sorry, Liz, it didn't end well. We couldn't find him immediately on motorbikes and all the rest of it. So I think a day or two after the TRG guys turned up, we launched a helicopter. And the funny and the it's not funny, but it is funny in the dark humor world. So we've always said that it was always bloody hard to get an aircraft, but when you did get one, they solved your problem straight away. So anyway, the police had rented or leased an aircraft, a helicopter to go up from Tennant Creek. And we were operating on, obviously, we didn't have comms with them over any aviation band. So the only thing we could really use was just citizens band UHF, which is open to everybody. So I think we chose a channel on the UHF that we knew that we sort of checked and there was no one on it. So we checked a particular channel. And anyway, as he's launched up, just confirming that the call sign for or the code word for locating the missing person will be Santa. And yep, no worries. Anyway, the helicopter takes off, and because what it had flown out to this roadside stop, like a rest area on the side of the road, and that's where they'd been briefed and all the rest of it. And we said, "This is the commencement of the search. Move out from here." So the helicopter's taken off, and anyway, within about 2 minutes, they've gone to the comms. I can't remember the call sign, but it comms back to the control, well, the command center that we'd set up. And when I say command center, I mean a 4-wheel drive with a tent next to it. Let's not get silly. So anyway, the helicopter's taken off, and they've gone, yeah, blah blah blah, Santa. And they go, yeah, confirm. The code word is Santa. And they go, no, negative, Santa. And we're like, oh. He's like, yeah, Roger, Santa, directly below us, 100 feet.
Wow.
Anyway, so we've gone, yeah, Roger, and we can see the helicopter. They're probably a kilometre away, just out through the bush. But you got to remember that country, it's Gibber Plains, which is, for those who don't know what that sort of country is, it's hard, lots of rocks about the size of your fist all over the place, interspersed with pretty low-level acacia scrub and spinifex. And it's bloody hard to walk through or ride through or anything like that. So the helicopter found this fella straight away. And anyway, a few of us got on trail bikes and we just rode slowly over to this fella. And I'm sorry, Liz, he had been deceased for about 48 hours. So,
Oh.
and you got to remember it was Tennant Creek to the Barclay region. I think it was January, so it's hot as hell. He wasn't in a good state. So I'm sorry, Liz. There was a reason I didn't finish that bloody thing. Oh God, I told you I'm a shit magnet. So, yeah.
Well, mate, was that the occasion, Damo, you swallowed a fly?
Oh God, it gets worse. Yeah. Yeah, so being one of the detectives, and I was the case officer for that particular coronial investigation, it's our job as the police out in those areas to obviously we secure the scene. Forensics come in, take a few photos. It's a coronial scene, not a criminal scene, so it's not the end of the world. Anyway, there's a few of us around, and there were big, tough territory response group guys there. Anyway, a few of them, one of the poor buggers had a pretty sensitive stomach, so I'm sort of at the head of the fella. I'm coordinating the recovery of this body, and anyway, there's blowflies everywhere, as you can imagine. And I went up to, I lifted my head to talk and give a direction on how we're going to move this body into a body bag. And as I did so, one of these blowflies has flown straight into my mouth, straight off the body. So I've obviously caught that at the back of my throat. I mean, we've all swallowed a fly, but how many of you have swallowed one off a corpse? So anyway, I swallowed this bloody fly, and I dry reach, but it wasn't so much me. It was the it was the fact that all the other poor buggers around me, they all responded to what I'd just done, and they were dry reaching and throw. It was a wild show. Yeah,
Well,
but
there
what's
you
even
go.
worse, Schultzy, I'll tell you another story why it's even worse.
Yeah,
That was my first rodeo with that kind of carry on the Barkly Highway. I
yeah,
reckon 6 months later, or maybe a year later, we had a similar situation, or it was a suicide. So look, these are not funny jobs, but you've got to, once again, the dark humor and all the rest of it.
yeah,
We had a body that we'd found, and he'd been there for a few weeks. He'd probably been there 4 weeks, um, having committed suicide on the side of this road. It was hard to find. And another time where we put up an aircraft at the last minute and found him straight away. And I did it again. But this time, what had been happening, and the reason this is pretty, yes, it is funny. With the Tennant Creek investigation unit, we were conducting a cross border operation with Queensland Police at Avon Downs. And this particular body had been located probably 60 kilometres west of Avon Downs, so three-quarters of the way to Mount Isa from Tennant Creek. So, because the detectives were right next door, the local police had found him with the use of an aircraft and the NTES. So, the SES in Northern Territory is called NTES, Northern Territory Emergency Services. And
yeah,
anyway, they've rolled out to this thing, and they put the plane up and found the body. So we've all come out there, and I've sort of taken over the investigation. And as we bagged the body, this time I'm surrounded by a Queensland detective who came for a drive just because he could,
yeah.
and a whole heap of probationary constables. I'm trying to be the big, tough, experienced detective. This time I properly swallow a fly straight off this extremely decomposed poor bugger, and I couldn't hold it back that time. I actually spun around and let it launch, and
Yeah.
so did about six other cops. It was just a mess. There was no, everyone saw what happened, and these young, probie connies it was on. And the poor old Queensland copper had come across with me. He spun around and spewed as well. He couldn't hold it back. He'd seen what happened. Anyway, we
Oh,
processed the scene. We put this fella in a body bag, get him back to an area where we can get him picked up by Tennant Creek. I think it was Barclay Funerals or whatever it was. And anyway, he
yeah.
goes, "For God's sake, take me back to Queensland." So yeah, we head back, and obviously we're going to continue with this investigation in the morning. It's a very long-winded missing person investigation where we found this guy eventually. But yeah, so not only have I swallowed flies off one body on the Barkly Highway, it's two bodies off the Barkly Highway. So,
Yeah, you are.
oh mate,
You are a shit magnet.
shit magnet.
Yep.
Yep. I don't think it's a badge of honour. I think it's just
No.
shit.
Oh,
No,
I know a few people labelled that with me as well. There was certain jobs they just wouldn't send me to because they knew it would just end up worse.
just end up in
That
tears.
Well, there was one actually. Just quickly, I remember I had to call him when I was out bush because we were also the fireys out in remote locations, and it was a public holiday, and there was a bit of a bushfire, and it was getting close to one of the council sheds, where they stored a bit of gear, and so I rang up the duty super, and this duty super knew me quite well, and I said, "Oh man, I just need to." Can I get a bit of overtime to put this fire out? She goes, yeah, not a problem. She goes, on one condition. All right, what's that? She goes, do not look inside the shed. I said, why? She goes, you'll find a drug lab.
Yeah,
She goes,
that's right. Yeah, exactly. Said, just turn up, take the yellow ute, spray the fire out, and get back to the bloody police station. Yeah, bloody oath. Yeah, no,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's good. And I mean, that's a funny. Obviously, I do RFS stuff now, and I'm trained, and I train other people to do firefighting stuff. And it's funny how the first time I was ever trained in how to do firefighting stuff was actually in Borroloola, because we had two brand new little Land Cruisers with little slip-on units. So people know the little grass firefighting units in the Northern Territory. Well, these two vehicles sat there with not many people to operate them. The Borroloola volunteers were a fairly small force, and we were sort of given a soldier's five on how to operate these things. And I think, yeah, we used them on very small occasions. Certainly not at big fires, just at little grass fires and things like that. But I think we quite enjoyed wearing our firefighter hat, mate, when we were out there.
Oh,
I think,
yeah, exactly, mate.
and I
Yeah,
think a lot of
like,
people were surprised if they called, geez, we've got this grass fire. Can we get the forest to come? And a couple of
yeah.
coppers would step out of the fire truck and like, we're here. It's like, we didn't want you fellas. We wanted the firefighters. Like, well, beggars
Mate,
can't
they
be
were
choosers. Yeah.
they were hoping for those muscled up bloody fireys.
Yep. And all they got were those paunch gutted coppers. So, yeah, no, definitely. Well, mate, I reckon that'll probably wrap us up. What do you think?
I reckon so, mate. I reckon we've covered a few things today. Yeah, tonight. Well,
Yeah.
tonight it is. We're recording this one, but
Yep.
mate, yeah, a big shout out to those ones that reached out, and yeah, please, anyone, get in contact with us. Through the socials. That's probably the most best way to do it on Facebook. But you can do it on contact us at tillordinarycops.com, the email address. But just get on and follow us, and yeah, mate, I'll see you next week, Damo.
Absolutely, mate. Always a pleasure. Take care.